Z shell has all sorts of really nice configuration options around managing your shell's history. So in this video, we're going to go over all the different options I've set over the years. If you're using the .fried rice project, all of this is going to be set up for you out of the box, but if not, no problem. We're going to go over everything from scratch. So first things first though, you want to open up your Z shell RC file. Usually by default, that will be in your home directory, but if you're using .fried rice, that's going to be in a different path. It's going to be in your .fried rice path, as well as .config Z shell RC. That's the file that we're looking at over here. So in this video, we're going to go over all these different options and environment variables, and I guess it wouldn't hurt to go from top to bottom here. So first things first here is the HISTFILE environment variable. This one allows you to control where your shell's history file is going to be saved on disk. So normally that would be in your home directory, but I don't like polluting my home directory. So in this case here, I kind of like to just have it along with my other configuration here, and it's going to be get ignored as well. So in this case here, .fried rice path in the .config Z shell history. And if you take a look here, this is the history now. Now I do have some recording start script here that clears my real history. My real history gets backed up, but yeah, some spoilers. We're going to go over some of this stuff here in this video, but yeah, I kind of like having everything there. But in your case here, if you're not using .fried rice or whatever, maybe you might replace this with something like your home directory instead, or xdg config home as well, depending on your preferences there. But yeah, once you have that set up, then your Z shell history file will be here by default, which is pretty cool. Kind of gives you a controllable custom solution there without polluting your home directory. Now let's go over the next two here, which are both set to the same value here, which is HISTSIZE and SAVEHIST. The first one is going to be how many lines are stored in memory, and the second one is going to be how many lines are stored on disk. And, I went with 50,000 for both of them. I don't know what the exact value is off the top of my head by default. For Z shell, it might be something like 1,000 or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, I wanted to crank this one up, but I didn't want to go too crazy for a couple of different reasons. So I'm not really too afraid of how much disk space or memory this is going to be using, because in my real history file here, I have about just under 5,000 lines there, actual unique history items, because we are going to be ignoring duplicates. But that's after 6 months or so since I formatted and ran native Linux here. So you can imagine extrapolating that out to be like, well, if it took me 6 months to get 5,000 items, then you might think if I can just times that by 10, 60 months to have 50,000 items, that would be what, 5 years? Yeah, 5 times 12 is 60. But it's even longer than that, I think, because since duplicates are not going to be here, it's going to be harder and harder to add more items to the history, because common things that you might run, they're already going to be saved there. So I don't know how long it's going to take me to hit 50K, but I think it's going to be a lot more than 5 years. But in any case here, though, with 50,000 items, one thing to be mindful of is every time you start up a window here or, terminal session, then this is going to load your whole file in memory. So that could control how fast a new terminal spawns or a new session spawns. And, if you have this set to 1 million or 500,000, or, even if you somehow had that many files there, that could add some latency there for starting a terminal. And I didn't want that to really happen there. And then, yeah, likewise here, I have other Z shell plugins that I've done videos about in the past here. For example, if I do something like sleep 2 here, I can just start typing SL or whatever, see that little ghosted text there, placeholder text, I can just autocomplete that out. And that's actually reading your shell's history file in memory, and then it's offering to autocomplete these things for you. And, you can imagine if you had something like, 200,000 lines in there, maybe that will be a little bit slower. And, that's happening on every key press. So I wouldn't want that to be slowing down my typing when I'm in the terminal here, because I have a very command line heavy workflow, so I'm typing all the time. I actually don't know what the performance is going to be like with, even 50,000 lines. I think it's going to be pretty fast. But yeah, again, I don't even think I'm going to go a whole lot higher than that, even after, potentially a decade of time, right? And this machine, I've done videos around my specs. It's nothing fancy here. This is a machine from 2014, and it's already feeling like basically typing instantly here on the terminal here with no delays whatsoever. So if you're wondering, why I have them set here, it's this. You could just set it arbitrarily to 1 million or something, but maybe you never get there. And yeah, I will mention here too that 250 kilobytes on disk here to store 5,000 items. So, even then it's the memory and disk space is very low. Even if you did have 10 times that, what is it going to be, 2.5 megs, which is really nothing nowadays. So yeah, let's move on to the next one here. By the way, these were environment variables to export. Now we have a whole bunch of different options to set. And one of them is going to be extended history, which is going to save your history with timestamps, which is super nice. So going over this timestamp information here, this is a Unix timestamp, and then separated by a colon, we have the duration in seconds. So we're going to go over that option in a little bit here, so we can actually measure how long a command took. That is pretty nice here. But yeah, maybe before we start breaking down this information here, the metadata for the timestamps, you might be wondering like why? Like why would you want to add the timestamps to your shell history? And really, I guess a question could be, why not, right? It's pretty nice to know, complete history of all the commands that you run, but it's even nicer to kind of be able to go back and maybe you're troubleshooting something, maybe your system is acting different for a certain reason. Now you can actually go back and be like, oh, you know what? Like 3 weeks ago, I ran this one command and oh, look at that. That might've been the command that's doing the problem, because when I look at this other log file, maybe you're debugging something, you can see these times kind of line up. Also, just a super aside here, maybe you have a server running Bash. Bash also supports being able to put the timestamp in here as well. So you can imagine maybe you're hired at a new job or doing some contract work or something like that. Maybe you have this 8-year-old server that you're trying to figure out, like, how did this server get into this state? Maybe that server was set up years ago without infrastructure as code. Yeah, being able to look at when commands are run on a server that you didn't control, so you can tie those dates and times back into maybe, Jira tickets or some other side effect or somewhere else outside the system there, really helps a lot for being able to fill in pieces of the puzzle. So yeah, going back to here, the format of this is Unix timestamp : duration, how long it's taking to run. But this is a really clever pattern here. And by the way, I should say also too, like we are looking at it as a Unix timestamp, but you can run commands to get this information in a more readable way. So normally you'd run your history like that. You can see, a sample of your history there. If you do -I, that is going to give you a human readable time here where we have, year, month, day, and then we actually have, the actual time here as well. So another thing too, you can do D, that's going to give you the duration of how long the command took. You can see sleeping 2 seconds here, it's 2 seconds here, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, going back to here, this is a really neat pattern because, normally in your shell history, you can just copy that line, and then paste it into a new terminal and run that command. You can actually do this with this as well. So for example, if I grab that whole line here, well, that's actually a bad one. Let me grab this one because I don't want to do the recording start script. But yeah, if I go here and paste this in, then boom, it's going to sleep for 2 seconds and we're done. And actually, if we go back down here, it's here. It's kind of interesting. We're in like Inception world now where this is happening, but maybe you've never seen this command before. This is actually the no-op command with a colon. So you can just run something colon like hello world or whatever it is. And this is going to do nothing and it's going to exit code 0 here. So it's really cool, right? You can imagine this. So we have semicolon here, right? Breaking up the metadata with your command. So this allows you to copy this whole thing, which is going to be a no-op, and then actually just run your command. So that's pretty nice. It's a little bit different than, I'd be thinking like, well, couldn't you just use a comment like this or something like that? But if you did this, then that's going to comment the entire line. So if you pasted that into your terminal, it wouldn't actually run anything because the whole thing is commented out. So yeah, it's a nice little clever pattern there for the developers of Z Shell. And yeah, I just saved this file. It looks like it got formatted like this. That's kind of interesting. That's not planned in this video, but I'm kind of wondering now, like what happens if I do something like echo hello world, this file is going to get rewritten. No, it just leaves it as it is. Cool. All right. What about shell history? Does it still work when it's formatted like that? Apparently it does. So that's kind of neat. But in any case here, this is the file here with some timestamp information. So let's go back to the other file that we're going over here and go to the next one on the list here, which is going to be, inc append history time. So immediately append commands and also track the duration itself. And also I will mention here too with extended history, if you don't have this set and, you do have a whole bunch of different shell history, then what'll happen is every single command that you ran in the past, it is going to get a timestamp of whenever you enabled this in your Z Shell RC file. So they're all going to be backfilled with a specific time with a duration of 0. So, just going back now to the next one here, this is also going to track the duration of the commands, which is pretty cool. So you can know if a command ran for 5 seconds or 2 seconds or maybe 100 seconds, whatever it happens to be. For example, if we take a look here at the man pages for history and we run that, you can see, I don't know, I'm not counting really the seconds here, but maybe it's been what, 6, 7, 8 seconds, something like that. So let's quit this out. And then we'll go and take a look here at the shell history file. Then go down here and you can see, oh, it looks like, I opened up the man history there for 5 seconds and then I quit out. So that's also really nice to know for just debugging stuff maybe that happened, right? You can be like, okay, when I ran this command, it ran for 2 minutes or something like that. I don't know. I've definitely had times doing work on servers and stuff like that where it's really nice to know like the expected duration of how long a command should run, especially if you're taking over like a legacy server or some other server that you didn't control. Also, just for your own stuff, it's, I don't know, it's kind of nice little quality of life enhancement just to see how long things took here. If nothing else, it just sets like an expectation to be like, oh, cool, when I run that command, it may take 2 minutes if I'm doing some I don't know, SQL dump or whatever it happens to be, So that's nice. So the next one is a little bit easier to describe here, ignore all duplicates, right? Never add any duplicate entries. So this one's pretty cool too, because, by default, if you don't set that, then if you were to, run man history twice, then you'd end up with two different items. They would be in different timestamps. That's fine. By the way, I will mention here too, when you do have timestamps enabled like this, even if I were to run man history again at a different point in time, let's do it actually, run it and then quit. Let's even do it a couple times, right? It's only going to be added here once. One nice thing though is that the way it does the deep duplication is it is going to always put the most recent time that you ran the command at the bottom with the timestamp of when you ran the command. So, you can imagine if you ran something like an ls-la or something, probably, 500 times in the last year or something like that, the last time you ran it is always going to be the one that wins, and that's always going to be at the bottommost of the file. So I don't know what Z shell does internally, but maybe it just goes through the file, looks for an existing one. If it's there, it deletes it, and then it just appends a new item at the bottom there. So maybe it does work something like that. Who knows? This just avoids duplicates, right? Because there are a whole lot of different commands that you're going to be running probably all the time, and maybe you don't want to have them duplicated. However, with that said, if you're trying to do some troubleshooting or really recreate the state of your system or something like that, maybe you do want to have duplicates. So in which case you just wouldn't set that one, because I am running commands like looking at the manuals for things like even like cd with no arguments put you back in your home directory, which I already was at. But if I were to go to like temp directory and just run that, then it's going to put me there. I run this command a lot. I don't really need to know that I ran the cd command like 168 times this month, although I guess for statistics point of view that could be interesting. But yeah, okay, let's go on to the next one here, which is ignoring commands that start with a space, which I really like a lot. So for example, if you were to do something like echo hello world, and we take a look here at the history file that we were looking at a second ago, you can see it's there, right? But if I do something like echo hello world 2, we would expect that a new item would be added. Let's just do that to confirm that, right? Okay, cool. There it is. Because, going back to that dedupe command here, ignoring duplicates, it's the entire command with all the arguments. It's not just the binary that you're running, right? So again, like you can have a whole bunch of different CD paths that would be super useful because you can like reverse search them, right? So like, for example, I don't know, side topic a little bit, but if I were to do CD here and Control R, maybe we do a start, we can start looking for temp or whatever, this is a very quick way for you to bounce between different directories. But in any case here, going back to here, what I was saying before about the spaces, the ones get ignored, let's go and do echo hello world 3. However, I'm going to start this one with a space instead. So it still runs the command, no problem whatsoever. Your shell knows how to handle that. But if you look here, there is no hello world 3. Now this could be really useful. It's, maybe you're running some really long, like, I don't know, shell script that you're copy pasting from somewhere else, and you don't want that to clutter up your history. So you can just start it with a space here, and then it's not going to be written to history. Or I don't know, maybe you're copying something for an important like private client or whatever, and you just don't want to have that in your shell history. That's one way to go about it. Also, by the way, if you do find something sensitive in your history, it's just a text file. So it's like, I can just take these 2 lines here and just remove them, save the file, and now we're back in business where that never existed. So that's also a pretty nice thing in case you just do need to modify your history. That's also why it's nice to have it in a controlled spot here. But yeah, going back to here, that is ignoring duplicates, ignoring commands that start with a space. And then the last one here is just removing unnecessary blank lines. And this one is just going to basically remove some leading and trailing white space and, things that don't need to be there. So if we do something like echo, a million spaces and then hello, and then you can see it is going to work, but if we go here and take a look at the history file, then it's just going to be echo, with 1 space there, or it's basically condensing or squishing all those adjacent spaces. And, new lines as well would get removed if your command was maybe a shell script with a whole bunch of new lines. I find that one's pretty nice just to make the file a little bit more human readable, kind of just removes things that don't need to be there. So yeah, that's basically all I have configured here for Z Shell RC. And if we take a look here at the manual online for Z Shell, there are other options that you can set besides here, the whole history section. I'll leave a link to this one in the description if you want to check it out. But, I've gone through quite a few of these here. And yeah, the ones that are set in the config file are the ones that I use in my day-to-day. I didn't really find any other ones that I really were super interested in having. There is this idea of a share history, but with tmux and everything, I kind of don't really use it. Although it does mention a really useful command here, this fc and then -ri. So like, for example, if we go back to the tmux setup here, let me actually open up a second terminal window here. And if I do something like echo like 1, 2, 3, right, hit enter. If we go back to here into the shell history, then that's there, right? It's in my shell's history. But if I were to do something like up arrow, there's only echo hello because echo hello was the other command that was ran. So this shell on the bottom, it has no idea about echo 123 being loaded. It just doesn't even know that it exists. So what you could do is you can run fc here, and then you can do ri, which is going to read in your entire shell history. However, with the I flag, it's only going to take the shell history that's not already currently loaded in this shell, and then it's going to add those new items there. So if I run that one, now if I do an up arrow, we can actually see the echo 123. So this is a way for you to, get another terminal window that you might have open, even inside of Tmux, also without, to be aware of new changes here in your shell's history. So yeah, if you like that behavior by default, then you can turn on share history, and then yeah, you can do that and then remove some of the other options in here. I don't really use that, so I don't know exactly which ones that would need to be removed, but yeah, I think extended history and this one also both would go away. In the end, I sort of don't like that anyways, because with Tmux and everything, I might have a whole bunch of different windows and panes open. And yeah, if I jump to like a different session, maybe I want to be able to hit the up arrow and see the last command that I ran in that session for that specific project. I don't want to necessarily see the last command that I ran. However, this FCRI, I do run this every once in a while if I do want to sync up my history. So I'm glad that we took a look here at the docs to remind me of that one as well, because I do use it from time to time. Almost forgot it in the video. But in any case that is basically configuring your Z shell history here. I'm kind of curious, like what settings do you have? Some different. I'm kind of curious to see like on a modern machine, like how fast is it with, 20,000 or 100,000 items on your machine? But yeah, with that said, if you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.